we treated the entire country, the world, the same at the same time. What that led to was like almost a cognitive dissonance of like, these people are lying about this virus. Like,
Right.
no one has it.
You
I don't
can't
know
connect
anybody.
to it in the way others might who are living it.
And so when it got there, they didn't take any of the precautions and we lost lives as a result. I mean, he eventually ends up getting the vaccine and all that because he had family members who died. So it just, I chose stories to illustrate how different at the same time in March 2020, how different people's lives were depending on where they lived. But public health used a blanketed approach, and that maybe wasn't the best way to go. Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Tista Ghosh, physician, epidemiologist, award-winning health journalist, and author of Before the Next Crisis. And you are listening to the Public Health Insight Podcast.
You're listening to the Public Health Insight Podcast, your go-to space for all things public health and global health, from the Sustainable Development Goals to the social determinants of health, as well as interesting dialogues about the diverse career opportunities that exist in these fields. Remember to subscribe to the podcast and leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts and Spotify so other people like you can benefit from our content. From PHI Media, I'm Gordon Thane, and in this conversation, you'll hear stories that challenge what we thought we knew about the pandemic. We'll go beyond the headlines into the lived experiences of frontline workers, public health leaders, and the communities that shaped and were shaped by the crisis. In this episode, Dr. Tista Ghosh joins us to unravel the real stories behind her new book, Before the Next Crisis, and what they reveal about the future of public health. Take a listen.
I want to circle back to something that a cliffhanger that we left things off on regarding those personal stories, anecdotes from your recent book, Before the Next Crisis. Let's go all the way back up. Why did you write this book now? You're collecting these stories, you're part of the experience, you had very rich experience working with workers across the globe in making sure that they were safe. No doubt would have learned a lot of things as you described. And then there's these funding cut conversations happening, and obviously you would have been working on the book before maybe this became a little bit more loud, but why write the book, and then why is this a right moment to kind of release it, start talking about it?
Yeah, so I collected the story for a few years and then decided that they needed to be told as I saw more and more discontent, like disgruntled people.
Right.
And I got a contract with Columbia University Press to really make it a book.
What stands out in Dr. Ghosh's work is the sheer diversity of pandemic experiences. The book doesn't just follow the arc of a single city or a single hospital. Instead, it weaves together voices from construction sites in the South, hospital wards in New York, and boardrooms of major employers. Every story is a window into a different reality, sometimes hopeful, sometimes heartbreaking, but always human. So you were collecting the stories and the intention was not at the time to make a book?
Originally, I was collecting them in the sense of in my mind, I was collecting them, but I decided I had enough stories and I would keep notes,
Yeah.
and I decided I had enough stories that they could be a book and that they were rich and then I could add to them by intentionally then interviewing people who could enrich the book. So I made it. I already had some from workers, but I went back and I got more workers.
Okay, I see.
I then went back and got healthcare workers because they're like their own chapter because their experience is so intense and different. I went back and got large employers because they were keeping frontline workers safe and they had to deal with these issues more from a policy perspective, trying to navigate different countries' policies, different worker anger and all that stuff. And then finally public health workers themselves and what they experienced. So I went back and collected all that and actually turned it into a book.
So what was the thinking behind teasing out those specific stories? Because I imagine there was probably more to choose from that you could actually include in your books.
Absolutely.
So what was the thinking behind the ones that eventually made the book? What was that thought process like?
I think it was how they illustrated some of the main themes that I
Okay.
kept
Okay.
seeing over and over.
Mm-hmm.
And one theme was how you experience the pandemic was very different based on your local context. And so a lot of the 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 stories are not standalone, they're weaved in together chronologically.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, you see the construction worker in the southern US who is being told he has to mask and he has to do all these things, and there's no cases where he is. He's never met a single person who has COVID at the time. And he was a construction manager, so he had to get all his guys to wear masks. And he's like, construction workers don't want to wear safety helmets, much less masks, for a disease that they don't even have yet.
Right. They see the
Like, no
real
one's ever
hazard
seen
for
it.
their job specific hazard and are not taking all the precautions, much just like a theoretical thing as far as they're concerned. Right.
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 Meanwhile, I also interview the head of a hospital in New York City in that same time. And what they're going through is like a chaotic nightmare of not enough masks for their workers. New York's turned Central Park into a hospital.
Right.
They
Hospitals.
have
Right.
they have refrigerated trucks coming through because of the bodies. You know, a ship is parked in the harbor to be an overflow hospital. I mean, right? Like complete breakdown of society. And the guy in the South is like, why am I wearing a mask? And by the time it gets to the guy in the South, the virus, which came in a wave more in the summer months, which we now know is because COVID is spread through airborne, and that's when in the South you're indoors. Nobody believed it. They didn't believe any of the public health messages. They weren't going to stay away from people. They weren't going to wear masks. And many of his colleagues and even family members died of COVID when it finally hit. So we treated the entire country, the world, the same at the same time. But what that led to was like almost a cognitive dissonance of like, these people are lying about this virus. Like,
Right.
there's no one has it.
You
I don't know
can't connect to
anybody.
it in the way others might who are living it. Yeah. Yeah.
And so when it got there, they didn't take any of the precautions, and we lost lives as a result. I mean, he eventually ends up getting the vaccine and all that because he had family members who died. So it just, I chose stories to illustrate how different at the same time in March 2020, how different people's lives were depending on where they lived. But public health used a blanketed approach, and that maybe wasn't the best way to go. And so, how could we do that better rather than criticize? It's more about constructive listening and understanding. Okay, well, I kind of get how these construction workers in the South may have felt that way, rather than just jump to a conclusion. Well, they're just anti government, or they're anti
Right. Right.
this or that. Okay, well, if you live somewhere where there's no disease, or some workers, there are some people in Texas who lived in a place where their closest neighbor is 10 miles away.
Right. Right.
Well, I mean, they're like, seriously have to wear a mask, right? Versus somebody in Seattle or in Toronto who lives literally next to their neighbor in a close environment. And where in a city, you're constantly thinking about how you might impact your neighbor because your neighbor is right in your face. So, how our messaging needed to be more nuanced based on where you were. And we didn't maybe do that. And that's an important lesson to learn before the next crisis.
Now, I wanted to see if I could give you a chance to expand on this one story, because we have a lot of public health professionals listening from all kinds of disciplines. And I think there was a story about a physician in rural Wisconsin who maybe was a little harassed because of public distrust in healthcare, vaccines, etc. Can you tell us a little bit more about how stories?
About that one.
Yeah, as like one of the messengers or someone who's responsible for doing the public good in terms of caring for people, and how that can backfire on us as health professionals who are trying to do the right thing, I guess would be the spin of the moral of this story.
Yeah. So this person lives in rural Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say going back to like March of 2020, she was in one of those locations where they didn't have any cases. They didn't have any cases of COVID till October.
Wow.
Right.
It's easy to forget just how different the pandemic looked from a rural clinic in Wisconsin compared to a crowded hospital in Chicago. The same virus, the same guidelines, but worlds apart in experience. These stories remind us that public health isn't just about science. It's about trust, community, and the places we call home.
Contrasting, there's a physician in Chicago, which is not that far,
Mm-hmm.
who was flooded in March of 2020 and drowning in COVID-related issues. And so that difference, urban versus rural, as well as
right, same kind of thing that they do for a living, vastly different experience.
Wow. And that's why I chose to do it chronologically. Because if I showed, it's like, if you go back to March of 2020, this is what all these people are doing and how different their scenario is, but they're being asked to do the same things. The rural Wisconsin physician was saying in that time, because of the mask shortage, their community really started making masks. It was a small community. They cared. They saw the TV shows about what's happening in New York. They banded together. They made masks for all their healthcare workers with their old clothes, and they seemed to care. But as time went on, it just was like dragging on, and they still don't have any cases till October. And it's just similar to the construction worker in the South. They're like, what is this? Like, we don't, like, why are we living this way? And it's just dragging on. And we're like, it's hard to believe. And for her, for this rural Wisconsin physician, you started to get conflicting messages coming out of the CDC, from WHO. WHO at some point early on tweeted hashtag it's not airborne. And then later it was airborne. And so,
and
this
masks
poor
are not
doctor,
effective. Masks are effective.
masks are effective, not effective. They are effective. Oh, wait, don't do it. You just use a bandana. Oh, wait. No, use an N95. I mean, just, and this poor rural Wisconsin doctor is having to translate these messages from conflicting government agencies, and everybody has the internet, and they're like, but wait, WHO tweeted this, CDC saying this, and your state is saying something completely different, and the local is like stuck dealing with trying to translate all these mixed messages. And originally she felt like the doctors were local doctors were the trusted ones, but they were starting to get confused too, right? Like, and I think part of it is that the public isn't used to seeing science unfold real time.
Right.
They are used to seeing the end result of 20 randomized controlled trials.
Good point.
And here was the final blah, blah, blah. But the truth is that it's not like the CDC or WHO or anybody was like lying per se. They were just didn't know. And
like the whole world was like a lab. I imagine if there was a TV show where we could watch how discoveries are made, it would almost play out exactly. Wait, this one works. No, it doesn't work. We're kind of watching it play out in real time, to your point.
Right. And so I think to the public, it came out as they're lying to us. But to those of us who work in science, we're like, well, yeah, we didn't know. And then we just found out something new. And so I think a lot of it is the popular understanding of science has to shift, in the sense that what we're taught in school, that by the end of blah, 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 we were all these different trials. We knew that X, Y, and Z happened. Well, originally they didn't know, and we had to go back and forth and figure it out. But also in public health messaging, like to be honest and say, you know what, this virus didn't exist like 2 years ago or a year ago. We know nothing about it. So we're learning. It's going to take us some time, and we're going to make mistakes, and we're going to go one way, and then we're going to be like, oh, wait, no, we learned something new. It's actually this other thing. We're not trying to deceive you. We're learning. Like, it's happening real time.
Mhm.
And so I think is our communication, it's something to be learned for before the next health threat, is how to communicate science happening real time with authenticity so that people don't lose trust in you. But also for the public to understand and learn that you can't figure out something brand new that just happened in a moment and say it with certainty like there were 20 controlled trials, because there was no time for 20 controlled trials. And so it's a health communication piece that we need to figure out before the next crisis.
As we wrap up this episode, we've explored the power of personal stories in public health, the challenges of communicating science in real time, and the lessons learned from a pandemic that touched every corner of the globe in a different way. Dr. Tista Ghosh's insights remind us that context matters, and behind every headline are countless untold experiences shaping our collective response. Coming up next, we'll continue our conversation with Dr. Ghosh, diving deeper into the lessons learned and the stories that didn't make the headlines. That's next time on the Public Health Insight Podcast.
This show was edited by me, Gordon Thane, with additional editing from LaShawn Benedict. Sound design and mixing by myself and LaShawn Benedict. The original music from The Music Room, composed by Tom Fox, licensed from Johnny Harris. The cover art design for our show by LaShawn Benedict. The Public Health Insight Podcast is produced by PHI Media.
Thank you for listening to the Public Health Insight Podcast, your go-to space for informative conversations, inspiring community action. If you enjoy our podcast, be sure to subscribe and leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. See you in the next one.